Ravi Venkatesan mentions you in his book, What the Heck Do I Do With My Life? What merited Ravi's mention in his book about you?
Thanks to Ravi for mentioning in his book. I don't know what merited that, but I can tell you what led to that. So I think I've been meeting Ravi for the last 2.5 years. It was a very interesting connection. One of my colleagues and the co-founder of our organization, his father has an expertise in playing the accordion, and he had bumped into Ravi, and Ravi had expressed his interest to learn the accordion. And I think when they got speaking, my colleague's father, Gautam's father, actually said, this is what Gautam and Rebenefit are doing, and Ravi was kind enough to say, hey, I would like to meet. And I happened to go and meet Ravi, and I think on an average I meet him once a quarter or twice a quarter. And I think those conversations with him, probably I was answering the question, what the heck do I do with my life? Some way I was asking that question and answering that, and probably that is what led to a mention in the book. But I also feel that the vantage point my work gives me, and the base which the work gives me probably has also allowed for that to happen. So I think it was this connection, conversations, but more than any of these things, the vantage point the work has allowed me, I think probably has led to a mention in the book.
So let's jump right into it.
Yeah.
Let's talk about your work.
I'm born and brought up in Bangalore. My dad, we are a family of migrants, and my dad migrated to Bangalore, and probably his only aim in life was to settle in Bangalore, because back then he had never seen a city like Bangalore, which had green cover and good weather and things like this. And I think I was also fortunate enough to be in a very good school, which kind of instilled this mindset of being a part of the solution rather than finding problems. So there was a lot of nudging around being action oriented, and as a kid I had massive ownership for the city. Anything about Bangalore was mine. I owned the good, I defended the bad, and which also was not only emotional in nature, was also more action oriented. It could be cleaning up Lal Bagh on a Sunday, going and doing a campaign in Cubbon Park on another weekend, so on and so forth. School moved to college, and in college actually I became quite restless, because I started observing that ownership and change making became very cerebral in nature. People are talking about it, people have opinions about it, but nobody was willing to roll up their sleeves and get their hands dirty. And that is when, after college, I said, I'm 21, 22, I have nothing to lose in life, have some privilege of, getting a reasonably good education, not necessarily having to support my family. My grandfather, father, took us from lower middle class to middle class. And again, what is middle class in our country is also a huge question. So I was like, let me give this a shot. And for about 15 months, Subbu, I was collecting garbage. I was collecting garbage from roughly 150 households with a friend of mine. And it was a wonderful experience. I say it is, that experience taught me two things. One is, it activated all my senses, sense of touch, sense of smell, sense of hear, and not only the mind. But second, it made me question, is every social problem an environment problem, and is every environment problem a social problem? And the second question it led me to was, who owns and solves these problems? Is it the big governments? Are they the big corporations? But why aren't citizens participating in that? And that, along with Gautam, led to the birth of Rebenefit. The idea is very simple. How do we increase citizen engagement in an action-oriented way in our cities, wherein citizens own the city through local data, local solutions, and local communities. And our specific focus was young people, because we realized it's a unique muscle. owning the commons and trying to solve the problem of the commons, the failure rate is very high. So you wanted an age group which is less cynical, has a higher adoption to technology, is wanting to build skills, because if you can solve the problem of the commons, you're building such unique skills which I don't think most things in life offer. So that led to the birth of Reap Benefit, or as we now call it as a Sol Ninja movement. The young people who take actions, we call them Sol Ninjas. So that's been the journey.
Talking about the ninjas, and these ninjas are the 8 to 18 and 18 to 25?
I would say they are 12 to 23. 12 to 25, you can take that range.
Where do you place them on this innocence to excellence scale in terms of their involvement, in terms of their participation?
So I don't think there's a straight answer, but I'll try to I'll try to share my experiences in a candid manner. So at least what I'm seeing is there's an urban-rural divide. Clearly, my limited experience is showing that younger people from tier 2, tier 3 towns have a huge appetite, a huge willingness to roll up their sleeves, pontificate less, and actually go out and do something.
Right.
There's a higher ownership for their mohalla, for their street, for their city, for their town, and they might not know its climate change, they might not know its local governance, but the ability to go out and be in a space of uncertainty and ambiguity, I see a huge ownership of young people in tier 2, tier 3 towns, and also huge hunger. Wanting to build skills, wanting to push the envelope, willing to take setbacks. That's one huge learning I have got. In the urban setup, again, it's not a straight answer. What I see is there is a significant amount of young people in the urban setup who will say the right things, who have been trained cerebrally to a point that they know what the audience wants to hear, but the translation of awareness to action is quite limited. Right, so you might hear them in popular media, you might hear them on social media, etc. But my understanding has been that probably because of not having probably a certain type of a lived experience, probably sometimes having too many choices, so on and so forth, there is a segment in the urban setup wherein I have seen that while cerebrally they will say all the right things, right. The translation of knowledge to action is quite limited. The ownership for their street, their mohalla is quite limited. They look at issues at a global level and not necessarily at a local level.
Right.
Again, in the urban setup, you have young people from underserved communities, and I think that is the audience which is probably sandwiched the most. And their lived experience and felt reality is way more extreme. For example, most of us will not have a garbage pile right outside our house, right? I see the need, the hustle there much more. In the urban setup, I see women and girls participate way more and are willing to push the envelope more than men. So I think this is probably as candid as I can get from my limited vantage point and experience.
Let's understand environment, or the impact of accountability at a personal level.
There is a significant part of the population which, unfortunately, because of their lived reality, need not even be accountable for the environmental degradation, right? I mean, we are talking about basics missing, access to lack of water, so on and so forth. So to flip it, I think the urban elite, to a great extent, have accountability in words, but very limited accountability in action. You will hear them talk about using a public transport, but then they will make choices of having their own personal vehicles. And I'm not passing a judgment.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right? You would very rarely find the urban educated elite go out and vote in municipal elections,
right.
Or hold their local councillor and corporator responsible. So clearly there is an audience which is knowledgeable, which is aware, but need not, again, it's not moving into action. And there's another audience which is actually in action, but necessarily will not have awareness and knowledge the way we define it and prescribe it. So yeah, that's how I would answer it. Like there is a group which is action oriented, but will not be able to probably articulate in an article or while they're speaking, and there's another group which is very good in articulation, but the translation is very different. Having said that, cities like Bangalore, cities like Pune, cities like Chennai, there is a growing citizen movement. There are enough urban elites who are now, realizing that this has to be inclusive, and they're working in that direction. So I'm not wanting to paint everybody with the same brush, but slowly that is happening, but it is slow. The translation of knowledge to action is very, very limited.
Do you have a prescription for how this can be catalyzed?
I don't think digital is the silver bullet. I think it's an enabler. I'm beginning to feel digital actually is creating more silos.
Right.
I have a feeling that digital is creating more micro bubbles than there were. So, for example, I'm operating within a bubble of people who are like me, who agree with me, who endorse me. Right. I think the secret sauce is breaking the gap between digital and real.
Physical.
And physical.
These communities can be local communities.
Yes, yes.
When I'm talking about the global, in a very local manner. So, and that local community has to be communities of interest,
right,
which when an idea has matured,
right,
will graduate to communities of practice.
Right. So what I've learned, Subbu, is how do communities get formed? What are the rallying factors for communities? And through our work, I've understood there are three ways. And I think community building, so I think community mobilization, then community building, then community sustenance, then community leadership, then community leadership which is being decentralized is a very, very difficult journey.
It is.
Because it is a game of letting go of power and allowing collective efficacy and collective wisdom to come together.
Absolutely.
Having said that, what have I learned? We have learned that there are three ways in which people rally around communities. And it's not a fixed persona, so I'll detail that more. The first thing what we have learnt is communities are formed around any form of a geography. My city, my area, my school, my college, my company. There's an identity, right? So there is some, I'm a Bangalorean, you're a Bangalorean, right? There's a form of community building. I'm from this school, you're from this school, we come together. The second type of communities we have seen is wherein young people want, either they come together for an aspiration they want to be, some type of a persona, data community, technology community, design thinking community, hands-on community, policy community. Like this is one learning wherein they come around, they come together on wanting to be a persona or wanting to validate and strengthen the persona they think they already are. So it is sometimes a journey of discovery or it is a journey of validation.
Right.
The third thing what we have learnt is communities forming around issues. Right? I care about garbage, I care about water, I care about municipal governance, I care about climate change. What we have also realized is that people should have the freedom and the ability to opt in and opt out. Sometimes I'm in a geography based community, but I'm aligning more with personas, right? So these are three communities we have learned, right? The second thing what we have realized is community mobilization. Getting people to join communities is very easy, but the rituals, the value system, community building is a very, very paradoxical process. It's a science, it's an art. You have to be centralized, you have to be decentralized. You have to be directive, but you need emergence to come.
Yes.
And very few people can do it. So either you have a very strong top-down community wherein you're exactly told what has to be done. But if you're talking about local communities, I think any entity which knows how to operate within these paradoxes, or as how Ravi calls it, a growth mindset, right, is where communities actually get built. Because so these are the three things I have learned, wherein you have to be centralized, but you have to be decentralized. You have to be directive, but you still have to allow emergence. You have to have micro, you also need to have macro. And if you do that continuously in a consistent manner with set practices, culture, ritual, is when it translates into action. So it just cannot be ad hoc. It is ad hoc when there are certain issues which are beyond our control. COVID. People just came together. You did not need rituals. You did not need culture, because there was a larger calling. But those larger calling are once in a year, once in 15 months moment. But during the peacekeeping time, we have realized that this is what is needed for community building.
My question to you is more about, should they be mutually inclusive or mutually exclusive?
I think it's already happening. The other day I was speaking with some young people and they were educating me on the concept of hustle culture, which is, I think, is a more relevant term for passion economy today, wherein you have a job but you have different hustles happening. It depends on from what vantage point you're seeing it socially, right? But to answer your question in a very simple point, what I learned during COVID is the future will belong to people who can operate between uncertainty and ambiguity. We all have been trained in our schools and colleges, because it's a factory system, to keep on pushing for certainty, to keep on pushing for certainty, plans and structures. And so basically it's always, we are always looking for effectiveness, efficiency, right? Everything is efficiency, right? What I learned during COVID was efficiency was not necessarily the solution to the problem. It was effectiveness at that point. How do you respond? And what I learned was people who are able to embrace ambiguity and uncertainty better are people who are able to respond much faster, and are people who naturally can keep on wiring their skill sets. And I'll give you an example. Like there were one set of people, every time a crisis happened during COVID, they would go back and say, let's brainstorm and let's plan. Now, in a COVID-like situation, it's almost like a sport. You're on the field, you have to react moment to moment in the here and now, but still have a eye on the big picture, right?
Yes.
And I saw people who were able to do that, right, were more anti-fragile in nature, were ahead, were able to preempt, were able to listen to what is happening on the ground. So I don't think the question is whether we should leave the old mindset and a new mindset will happen. I think the system is already pushing towards that.
Right.
Is already pushing towards that, and I feel people who can operate well with uncertainty and ambiguity, and these are people specifically coming from underserved communities, young people coming specifically from tier 2, tier 3 towns. I think they're naturally ready to respond to uncertainty, ambiguity much better than people who have gone through certain educational systems wherein rationality is our port of call for every problem.
Right.
So I think the future will belong to irrational people, who know how to navigate in uncertainty and ambiguity. So if life is a tiger, I don't think they will want to tame this tiger. They will go on a ride with this tiger. But there are lots of people like me who have had a certain form of upbringing in education wherein we have been told that we have to tame this tiger. And I don't think life is going to provide us enough opportunities, because we are entering a new era, and that was okay in the industrial era and the factory era. But like you said, somewhere we are entering an ecosystem era. And in an ecosystem era, every node will have to keep on reacting real time to every hub. And that requires the ability to be okay with uncertainty and ambiguity. And if I find anybody who's okay with that, for me, that's a prime candidate to, request them to join our organization. So that's how I'm looking at it.
Okay. Today, if there is an onset of a new pandemic, anywhere in the world, this is including the most developed countries and the least developed countries, there is no preparation for it yet.
Yeah. I see what you're saying, and I don't have an answer. We were listening, we had a org get together a week back, and we were listening to one of the finest social entrepreneurs in our country, Anshu Gupta. And one of the points he made was, he actually felt human behavior will move in a more positive direction post-COVID, but he said that he felt more dejected with what is happening post-COVID. I don't have an answer to that. Are systems prepared for it? Probably no. But I think somewhere there is the answer. My gut feel, Subbu, is that there is something happening on the ground. There is some mobilization. I think there's a large part of the population which is still recovering livelihoods, getting food on the table, just getting back on track. To your questions, are systems prepared? At least from what I'm seeing on the ground, I don't see it that way. I can give you an example of Bangalore. We still have not had an elected corporator or a councillor in the last 2 years. So clearly it shows that we are not prepared. Even from a governance lens, we learned that citizens play such an important role in episodes like this, but we are not looking to strengthen the power of citizens and get them involved. So I don't know if we have learned, very frankly speaking. I don't know. I mean to say, I'm pessimistic in thought and hopefully I'll be optimistic in action. I don't know if things have moved or are systems ready. I don't know if citizens are saying if there's going to be a next pandemic, is my primary healthcare center ready? Is my elected representative going to solve the problem? I don't see elections being fought on these things. So I don't know, there's something culturally happening which I can't put my finger to it. But I'm optimistic that there is a certain groundswell happening. I'm optimistic that this age group of 8 to 18, which is observing what is happening, is feeling restless, is questioning, is skeptical, and I feel that is going to push the envelope. That's all I can say. But yeah, to your pointed question, I have not seen if there's a pandemic tomorrow. I'm not optimistic if the systems will help. I'm optimistic that somehow citizens will mobilize. Normal people will come together and something will happen. What is that something? I can't tell you.
Isn't there a need for data autonomy in the first place?
I agree with the principle that, I mean to say, your data is yours and what you do with your data completely. I think more than autonomy, I would use our data agency, right? I have the agency to my data and my information. Let me put it this way. I think the more we open up and make data a more ubiquitous public good, wherein people see it as a public good and it is owned by, so if we can make data a commons and the commons belongs to everybody, like in a way the street, right? It's a common, it belongs to everybody. I think if that happens, and then riling up people around that, saying that when something is a common, it allows you to design and define your own narrative, right? Like I can go on a walk on the road for leisure. This road is also a livelihood opportunity for me to reach from point A to point B. Right. This road is also a place where my kid can learn how to cycle. This road is also a place where I can play. This road is also a livelihood opportunity for somebody who's having a iron center. So the point I'm trying to make is, I think a movement around making data a public good, right, and making it absolutely imperative for corporations and for governments, right, to say that this is a public good, this is my information, right, and this my information is a public good for people to use on. I think that agency is very, very important. And if that agency is there, then it allows people to identify what is the pathway they would want to take, like you said, for what action should happen. So I might think accountability is having public data and holding my elected representative responsible. Somebody else might think that the data is an opportunity to think of a livelihood opportunity or a solution to come up with an idea. Somebody might use the data to influence neighbors in their region. Somebody might use the data to mobilize people in a certain way. But the sanctity of that data and the openness of that data and the trust in the data is very important. Today, you don't know what information you can trust and what information you can't, and therefore we are entering this rabbit hole. So that's the way I am seeing it.
Right.
But my point, my limited point is, there is no one pathway to data autonomy.
True.
For some people, it could be series of experiences leading to that, and for some people, it could be understanding at a abstract level what data autonomy means, and then having series of experiences downward. So for some people it's a journey of upstream, and some people it's downstream. That's how I would see it. Definitely.
Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Yeah.